Good evening. My name is Tiffany Cheek, and I am presenting tonight on the policies in Arizona state law around referendums and initiatives in the legislature. And tonight, I will cover issues around definitions, the process for referendums and initiatives, the pros and cons, and how they are an example and an aid in direct democracy. A referendum is the method used by which voters um, can veto a law or part of a law that was passed by the state legislature. This can be done by gathering signatures from registered voters in order to place the law on the ballot for a public vote. This would mean that the average citizen has the ability to vote to cancel a law that the legislator has passed if they have support and other voters disagree with the new law. A referendum is created when a person or organization files the referendum within 90 days after the legislative body's session has ended. So that means either the state Senate or the House of Representatives, if they have passed a new initiative or law, that 90 days after their session has ended, anyone may file to remove or alter a law that has been passed. The process requires that a person or group would refer a law to the ballot by filing a statement of organization in order to set up a committee to represent the action as the sponsor. They must then submit signatures within 90 days of the end of the session in order to successfully apply to remove the law. The sponsor must gather 127,975 signatures for a referendum. There are several steps to the process that include forming a political committee to sponsor the action. They must file an application for a serial number and register any paid or out of state petition circulators. So these petition circulators would be responsible for actually going around the state of Arizona to get the signatures to hopefully validate those signatures and make sure they are submitted. They must also file the application for serial number. Currently, the state of Arizona is only taking in-person appointments in order to do that. They must then submit the signatures to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State will determine if they have gathered enough eligible signatures to put the law on the ballot for the next election cycle in order to remove or alter a law that has been passed by the state Senate or the state House of Representatives. An initiative, on the other hand, is a way that voters can propose new laws or make edits and adjustments to existing laws. This is also done by gathering signatures from registered voters. An initiative is created a little bit differently from a referendum. It must be filed 4 months before the next general election. The process is similar to a referendum. They must have a sponsor committee. They must have an application for serial number. They must register the petition circulators, and signatures are required. The difference comes in the signature process. The process requires 15% of voters if if a sponsor is looking to pass a state constitution mandate, but they only need 10% of voters to sign to propose a statutory amendment. There are both pros and cons to each process. It is a great process because it truly allows the average individual in the state of Arizona to have true influence on the laws and what is happening in their state. It is a great way for people to see the results of their work. It's also a great way to encourage collaboration among citizens in Arizona. It also could potentially foster innovation because those that are not traditionally trained in legalities and in the process of lawmaking may see other solutions outside of those that are traditionally pursued in government that might still be a viable and even economically friendly solution to some of the issues that come up in the state of Arizona. It allows them to also hold their officials responsible and accountable to the types of laws that they are making. I imagine that if a lot of referendums have been filed with the same lawmakers in place, that eventually the citizens of Arizona would begin to question the effectiveness of those lawmakers. If every law that they submit, we need to submit a referendum and either cancel that law or edit it. There are some cons to this process, although the idea of direct democracy seems like an amazing process. It's most certainly intriguing to me as a citizen of Maryland, where we don't participate in direct democracy. But the cons are something that in this most recent election I was very concerned about. So, one of the challenges that we have in the United States is that our electorate, as they call it in Arizona, is not all that educated about politics and the government structure. Unfortunately, our public schools are not doing a great job of educating our students and our citizens in regards to how a democratic government truly works, especially because we have more of a representative democracy instead of a direct democracy. And so a lot of those that are voting are not fully aware of how their states, how their local governments, and especially how the federal government is truly structured to understand the true power in their vote. So that is one of the downsides of the process of initiatives and referendums. While we would like to believe that all of our citizens are equally and expertly educated, that simply isn't true. There are still a number of inequalities in our public school systems that make a large difference in how people are educated or the quality of education that they have received. I know that in Maryland, high school students are only required to take one semester of American government. And a lot of that course focuses on the inception of American government, not necessarily what it looks like to be in a representative democracy today. As a result of our uneducated electorate, some of the recommendations that they make are not the most educated of solutions. They are not necessarily trained to think about lawmaking. They are not necessarily trained to think about how laws impact the citizenship as a whole. And so we run the risk of potentially putting initiatives or referendums on the ballot that could potentially hurt the greater good of the population in the state of Arizona. And additionally, when it comes to the ballot, unfortunately, many people do not adequately read their ballots, nor are they adequately prepared to vote. They don't take time to question their lawmakers. They don't take time to question their leadership. And they also don't take time to simply read through the language of something like a referendum or initiative. In our elections in the state of Maryland, we have seen this time and time again. We've seen things like hand counting ballots, things like extending the school year or shortening the school year to start after Labor Day to support the economy of Ocean City. These types of laws have been placed on the ballot for individuals to vote on, but have not been voted in the best interest of the people because, by and large, the citizenship was not educated enough to make a decision in their best interest. This process was more successful recently because some more wealthy investors were trying to influence the city government to decrease their number of city council representatives to try and shift the power balance in the city to a different group of individuals. Luckily, that initiative did not pass, and again was in the best interest of our state and our city. Unfortunately, having less people to work on our behalf would stress them out more, would make them less accessible to the citizens that they serve, and would ultimately make their impact less meaningful to the citizens that each city council person serves. And so, again, this is an unfortunate downside to the idea of initiatives and referendums and the general idea of direct democracy. But overall, I would be very interested to do more research into how direct democracy works, because it does seem more like the democracy that we are sort of sold in the Hollywood dream version of democracy, where each person's individual voice has an opportunity to count. Now, we know that there are plenty of people who are eligible to vote that don't vote, or that choose to abstain from voting on certain issues in general. And so that is their choice to exercise their right or not. But overall, the ideas of direct democracy in this process of initiatives and referendums feel like each individual person's vote really would make a difference. I think that it also brings more voices and more resources to the table when it comes to making decisions about laws and about things that directly impact the lives of individuals in any particular state and area. And so these are some of the pros and cons. Overall, I think that the idea of direct democracy would make a great difference in our country if there were more countries or more states that were participating in it and that were practicing it. And I hope to get to know a lot more about direct democracy and potentially think about ways to bring direct democracy to the state of Maryland. Thank you. Hopefully, there are no additional questions, but thank you for the opportunity to research initiatives and referendums in the state of Arizona.